I never believed in demons. The concept seemed ridiculous to me, supernatural creatures feeding off human desire and life force. But that was before I met Sarah, before the nightmares began, and before I discovered the ancient tome in my grandfather's attic. Now, I'm not sure what's real anymore, and I'm writing this as both a warning and a confession. If you're reading this, I'm probably already gone. It started 3 months ago when I moved into my grandfather's Victorian mansion after his death. Being a freelance writer, I thought the quiet countryside would help me focus on my work. The house was a treasure trove of antiquities, with each room holding centuries of family history. But it was the attic that changed everything. I found the book while clearing out old boxes. It was bound in dark leather, its pages yellowed with age, and written in Latin. My grandfather had been a professor of ancient languages, so finding such a tome wasn't surprising. What caught my attention was the way it seemed to pulse with an unnatural warmth when I touched it. The pages contained detailed illustrations of creatures that looked almost human, but not quite. Beings with wings, horns, and eyes that seemed to follow you across the page. The first night after finding the book, I dreamed of Sarah. She appeared at the foot of my bed, more beautiful than any woman I'd ever seen. Her long black hair floated as if suspended in water, and her eyes. God, her eyes were the color of sunset, with vertical pupils like a cat's. In the dream, she didn't speak, just smiled and reached out to touch my face. I woke up gasping, my sheets soaked with sweat, and the distinct impression of fingernails trailing across my cheek. I tried to convince myself it was just a dream, but the marks in the mirror told a different story. 5 thin red lines ran from my temple to my jaw. They didn't hurt, but they were undeniably real. That should have been my first warning, the moment I packed my bags and left. But something kept me there. Curiosity, perhaps, or something more sinister. The next few nights followed a similar pattern. Sarah would appear in my dreams, each time getting closer, becoming more intimate. Her touch left me feeling drained, but I couldn't resist. I found myself looking forward to sleeping, even as I noticed the changes in my appearance. Dark circles appeared under my eyes, my skin grew pale, and I lost weight rapidly. Yet I couldn't stop thinking about her. During the day, I threw myself into researching the book. The text described beings called Lilim, children of Lilith, the first woman according to some ancient texts. They fed on human essence through desire and dreams. The more I read, the more I recognized Sarah's features in the illustrations. The book warned that once a Lilim marked their prey, they wouldn't stop until they had consumed everything. But Sarah wasn't alone. As my obsession with her grew, I began noticing strange things around the house. Objects would move on their own, and I'd catch glimpses of shadows where there shouldn't be any. The worst was the singing, beautiful, melodic voices that seemed to come from inside the walls. They sang in languages I didn't understand, yet somehow knew were profane. One night, I woke to find a man sitting in the corner of my room. Unlike Sarah's ethereal beauty, he was darkly handsome, with features that seemed to shift in the shadows. His name was Marcus, he said, and he was there to help me. He explained that Sarah had marked me for her own, but he could offer protection, for a price. I should have known better than to trust him. The moment I agreed, I felt something fundamental change within me. The dreams of Sarah stopped, but Marcus's visits became more frequent. He would appear during the day now, offering advice, suggestions, slowly guiding my actions. I found myself doing things I wouldn't normally do, saying things I wouldn't normally say. It was subtle at first, small lies, minor manipulations of people around me, but it escalated quickly. My writing took a dark turn. The stories I produced became increasingly disturbing, filled with themes of seduction and corruption. Worse, they were successful. My subscriber count skyrocketed, and publishing houses that had previously rejected my work were suddenly interested. Marcus said he was helping me reach my potential, but I knew better. I was becoming like them. The changes weren't just mental. My reflections started looking different, not in any way I could precisely identify, but something in my features had shifted. My eyes seemed deeper, my smile sharper. People who knew me began keeping their distance, though they couldn't explain why. Even my dog, Max, who had been my faithful companion for years, started growling whenever I entered a room. I tried to break free. I burned the book, but it reappeared on my desk the next morning, completely untouched. I attempted to leave the house, only to find myself walking in circles, always returning to the front door. I called priests, psychics, anyone who might help, but either they couldn't see what was happening, or they fled in terror the moment they stepped onto the property. Sarah returned last night. She and Marcus stood at the foot of my bed, their forms shifting between human and something else. Something with wings made of shadow and eyes like dying stars. They told me I had a choice to make. I could join them, become like them, or I could serve as their vessel to enter fully into our world. Either way, I would be instrumental in their plans. I'm writing this now because I need someone to know what happened. The choice they offered wasn't really a choice at all. I can feel the changes accelerating. My hands shake as I write this, and not just from fear. My fingers are longer now, the nails turning to points. The mirror shows less and less of my reflection each day. To anyone reading this, if you ever meet someone too beautiful to be real, someone whose eyes seem to hold the secrets of the universe, run. If you find an ancient book that feels warm to the touch, burn it. And if you hear singing from inside your walls, voices calling your name in languages that shouldn't exist, leave everything behind and never look back. They're here now. I can see them at the edges of my vision, their wings spreading across the walls like living shadows. Sarah's hand is on my shoulder, her touch both burning and freezing. Marcus stands by the window, smiling that impossible smile. The change is almost complete. Remember my warning. They're always hunting, always hungry, and once they mark you, you're already theirs. I wish I could say more, but it's too late for me now. The hunger is becoming unbearable, and somewhere in the night, I hear someone calling my name. The journal ends here, the final words trailing off into an inhuman scrawl. Police reports indicate the author was never found, though several missing persons cases in the area remain unsolved. The house stands empty, but locals report seeing lights in the windows at night and hearing voices singing in ancient tongues. Some say they've seen figures with wings circling the property in the pre-dawn hours, but such stories are, of course, merely local legends, aren't they? I shouldn't have swiped right. That's what I keep telling myself as I sit here in my darkened apartment, watching the shadows move against the laws of physics. 3 weeks ago, I was a normal guy with a normal life. Now I'm barely sleeping, losing weight rapidly, and pretty sure I'm being hunted by something that wears the most beautiful face I've ever seen. But I should start from the beginning. My name is Michael Cooper, and I'm, or was, a software developer in Seattle. Good job, decent apartment, all the usual stuff. After my last relationship ended badly, I decided to try dating apps again. That's where I matched with Serena. Her profile was striking, but not obviously fake like the usual scam accounts. Just a few tasteful photos showing a woman with flowing dark hair, pale skin, and eyes that seemed to shift color depending on the lighting. Her bio was simple, looking for someone to share the night with. Yeah, I know how that sounds now, but at the time it just seemed poetic. We matched on a Friday night. The conversation flowed easily, too easily, looking back. She seemed interested in everything about me, asking questions about my life, my fears, my desires. I found myself telling her things I'd never told anyone, like the recurring nightmare I'd had since childhood about something watching me from the foot of my bed. "That's fascinating," she wrote. "Dreams are doorways, you know. Sometimes what watches us is waiting for an invitation." I should have picked up on the red flag in that message, but by then I was already drawn in. We agreed to meet the next night at a small wine bar downtown. I remember checking my phone constantly throughout that Saturday, worried she might cancel. Now I wish she had. The bar was dimly lit, all deep reds and dark woods. I arrived early, nervous energy making me fidget with my watch. When Serena walked in, every head turned. She was even more stunning in person, wearing a black dress that seemed to absorb light, her movements almost too graceful to be real. But it was her eyes that caught me. In the bar's lighting, they looked violet. "Michael," she said, and somehow she made my ordinary name sound like music. "I'm so glad you came." Her voice had an accent I couldn't place, something that seemed to shift between European and something older. The next few hours were a blur of wine and conversation. She asked me about my work, my family, my beliefs. Did I consider myself spiritual? Did I live alone? Did I ever feel watched in empty rooms? I answered everything honestly, caught in those impossible eyes. It wasn't until she reached across the table to touch my hand that I noticed something was wrong. Her skin was fever hot, and where her fingers met mine, I felt a strange pulling sensation, like something was being drawn out of me. The room spun briefly, and I blamed it on the wine. "You should invite me back to your place," she suggested, her voice somehow bypassing my ears and resonating directly in my mind. "We could continue this conversation somewhere more intimate." Warning bells were going off in my head, but my mouth was already forming the words, "I'd like that." The walk to my apartment was short, but strange things kept happening at the edge of my vision. Shadows seemed to follow us, moving against the streetlights. The few people we passed gave us a wide berth, some crossing the street entirely. One homeless man took one look at Serena and started frantically making religious gestures. In the elevator of my building, she stood closer than necessary. The pulling sensation returned, stronger this time. My knees felt weak, and dark spots danced at the edges of my vision. Serena smiled, showing teeth that looked just slightly too sharp. "You live alone," she said. It wasn't a question. "That's good. We won't be interrupted." I fumbled with my keys at the door, my hands shaking. Part of me was screaming to run, but a larger part felt drugged, compliant. As soon as we were inside, Serena's demeanor changed. The seductive smile became predatory, and her eyes began to glow. "Sweet Michael," she purred, her voice distorting. "So willing, so perfect. Do you know how long I've waited for someone like you?" She reached for me, and her hands had changed, fingers too long, nails curved into points. I tried to step back, but my body wouldn't respond. The pulling sensation returned full force, and I could actually see something like pale mist flowing from my chest into her mouth. I woke up the next morning on my couch, feeling like I had the worst hangover of my life. Serena was gone, but my apartment felt wrong. The shadows were deeper, and I could swear I heard whispers just at the edge of hearing. My reflection looked pale, drawn, like I'd aged years overnight. I tried to convince myself it had been a dream, or that I'd just drunk too much. But then I saw the marks, 5 deep scratches across my chest and what looked like bite marks on my neck. My phone was dead, and when I finally got it charged, Serena's profile had vanished from the dating app. All our messages were gone. That should have been the end of it. A terrifying experience, but over. I was wrong. That night, I started dreaming of her. Not normal dreams. These felt real. She would appear in my bedroom, sometimes as the beautiful woman from the bar, sometimes as something else, something that hurt to look at directly. Each time, I would feel that pulling sensation, wake up weaker. I started researching obsessively, looking for answers. The internet was full of myths and legends about creatures that fed on human energy through seduction. Succubi, they were called, female demons that drained men's life force. Most accounts were religious or medieval, but some modern accounts matched what I was experiencing perfectly. The dreams got worse. Now Serena wasn't alone. She brought others, beautiful men and women with eyes that glowed in the dark and smiles full of teeth. They would stand around my bed, arguing over who would feed next. One male figure, who called himself Marcus, seemed to be their leader. "She marked you too quickly," he told me one night, his voice like honey over broken glass. "Drew too much attention. But you're special, Michael. You can see us for what we are. That makes you valuable." During the day, I started seeing them everywhere. Beautiful people whose reflections in windows showed something else, something with wings made of shadow and eyes full of hunger. They would appear in crowds, at my office, on the bus, watching me, smiling those terrible smiles. I tried everything to protect myself. Religious symbols, salt lines, sage burning, all the things the internet suggested. Nothing worked. Each night they came. Each morning, I was weaker. I've lost 20 pounds in 3 weeks. My skin is gray, my hair's starting to fall out. The doctor says all my tests are normal, but he can't explain my symptoms. Last night, Marcus made me an offer. He said I was dying anyway. Their feeding was too established to stop. But I had a choice. I could become like them, join their hunt, or I could be consumed completely, become another memory, another missing person statistic. Choose quickly, he said. Serena was sloppy, drew you into our world too fast. Others are coming, older ones who don't approve of humans knowing about us. If they find you first, you won't have any choice at all. I'm writing this as a warning. They're out there, hunting through dating apps, bars, anywhere lonely people look for connections. They're beautiful and charming and everything you've ever wanted, and they're hungry. I can hear them now, outside my door. Multiple sets of footsteps, whispers in languages that human tongues can't pronounce. Serena's voice rises above the others, calling my name in that way that makes my blood freeze and burn at the same time. I know what my choice has to be. I won't become like them, won't help them hunt others, but I'm too weak to run, too far gone to fight. My research found one other option. There's an old ritual, a way to bind them to a place. It requires a sacrifice, a willing victim who's been marked by them. The price is my soul, but at least I can trap some of them here, stop them from hunting others. The candles are lit. The symbols are drawn. They're inside my apartment now, their true forms casting impossible shadows on my walls. Serena is smiling, that beautiful, terrible smile. Marcus looks almost proud. The others circle like sharks, their hunger a palpable thing. To whoever finds this, stay away from people who seem too perfect. Don't invite strangers into your home, and if someone's eyes seem to change color when they look at you, run. Run as fast and as far as you can. They're here. I can feel their hunger. The ritual begins now. I hope it works. I hope. Case number 2024-0472. Missing person, Michael Cooper. Last seen, January 15, 2024. Status unsolved. Apartment found empty. Multiple strange symbols drawn on floors and walls. Signs of forced entry, though security cameras show no one entering or leaving building. Several electronic devices found completely drained of power. Multiple witnesses report hearing screams and seeing strange lights, but no evidence of violence found. Case remains open. Note, similar cases reported in area over past 6 months. All victims met someone through dating apps shortly before disappearance. No bodies recovered. Investigation ongoing. Additional note, multiple tenants have reported unusual activity in and around victims' former apartment. Building management has difficulty keeping unit rented. Current tenant reports feeling constantly watched and experiencing unexplained fatigue. Local paranormal investigation groups have requested access to property but have been denied. Reports continue of unusually attractive individuals seen in area, particularly late at night. Several witnesses describe eyes that appear to change color and a feeling of being drawn to these individuals. All attempts to photograph or video these persons have failed. Investigation continues. There are precisely 13 paintings in the gallery where I work. 12 of them are masterpieces from various periods and artists, but it's the 13th that holds my attention. It appeared 3 months ago, and since then, 7 people have vanished without a trace. I know what happened to them, but no one would believe me if I told them. This is my account of the horrors that unfold nightly at the Blackwood Private Gallery, and why I can't leave, even though I know I'll be next. My name is Daniel Mitchell, and I took the night security job at Blackwood because it seemed perfect for an art history graduate struggling to break into museum curation. The pay was excellent, the hours quiet, and I'd have time to study the collection while working on my thesis. The gallery itself is housed in an old Victorian mansion on the outskirts of Boston, converted by the mysterious Blackwood family into a private showcase for their extensive collection. The job interview should have been my first warning. Ms. Eleanor Blackwood conducted it herself, a striking woman who seemed both ageless and ancient at the same time. Her eyes were an impossible shade of violet, and though she smiled throughout our meeting, it never quite reached those eyes. She asked strange questions, whether I lived alone, if I had family in the area, my beliefs about the supernatural. I answered honestly, thinking it was some kind of psychological evaluation. Now I know she was assessing my suitability for something far more sinister. The first month was uneventful. I'd make my rounds every 2 hours, checking the security systems and admiring the artwork. The collection was impressive. a mix of Renaissance paintings, Victorian portraits, and modern pieces. Each had perfect provenance and was worth millions. The security system was state-of-the-art, with motion sensors, cameras, and temperature controls monitoring every inch of the gallery. Everything changed the night the 13th painting appeared. I came in for my shift, and there it was, hanging in the West Wing, where there had always been an empty space. The painting depicted a masquerade ball, the canvas massive enough to show dozens of figures dancing in what appeared to be a grand ballroom. The technique was flawless, the colors rich and vibrant, but something about it felt wrong. The dancers' masks seemed to hide more than just faces, and in the shadows between figures, I could swear I saw movement. Ms. Blackwood arrived shortly after I discovered the painting. She explained it was a recent acquisition, though she was vague about its origins and artist. "It's called The Midnight Revel," she said, watching my reaction carefully. "Beautiful, isn't it? Almost makes you want to join the dance." There was something knowing in her smile that made my skin crawl. That night, I began hearing the music. It was faint at first, like a whisper of strings and flutes coming from somewhere deep in the building. I checked every room, but the sound never got louder or clearer. It just lingered at the edge of hearing, making me question whether it was real or just my imagination. The first disappearance happened 3 days later. A young woman, Claire Thompson, had visited the gallery during regular hours. Security footage showed her leaving at closing time, but her car remained in the parking lot. The police investigation turned up nothing. It was as if she had simply vanished into thin air. I noticed the change in the painting the next morning. Among the masked dancers, there was a new figure, a woman in a blue dress that looked exactly like what Claire had been wearing. The figure was small, easy to miss among the crowd, but once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. I tried to tell the police, but when they came to look, the figure seemed to have shifted position, blending in with the other dancers until I sounded like I was imagining things. The second disappearance occurred 2 weeks later. Thomas Reed, a college student who'd been sketching the paintings for an art class. Again, the security footage showed nothing unusual, but his figure appeared in the painting, a young man in a modern jacket transformed into period clothing, but still recognizably him. That's when the dreams began. Every night after my shift, I would dream of the masquerade. The dreams were vivid, sensual, and terrifying. In them, I walked through the ballroom depicted in the painting. The dancers whirled around me, their masks revealing glimpses of inhuman features. Eyes that glowed, teeth too sharp to be real, skin that rippled like smoke. In these dreams, I always encountered two figures who seemed to be watching me. The first was a woman of impossible beauty, with long dark hair and eyes that changed color like opals. She called herself Lilith. The other was a man who introduced himself as Asmodeus, handsome in a way that hurt to look at, with a voice that seemed to bypass my ears and speak directly to my soul. They told me I was special, that I could see the truth of their gathering. Each night, they revealed more about themselves and the painting's true nature. It was a portal, they explained, a gateway between our world and theirs. Every full moon, the barrier between realms grew thin, and they could pull through those who had been marked during their visits to the gallery. I discovered that Ms. Blackwood was their servant, maintaining the gallery as a hunting ground. The disappeared visitors hadn't been random. They had been chosen, marked by either Lilith or Asmodeus during their visits. The beings were collectors of souls, feeding off human essence through desire and fear. The painting was their trap, and the gallery their web. As I learned more, I noticed changes in myself. Food lost its taste, sleep became a luxury I both craved and dreaded, and my reflection started showing subtle alterations. My eyes darker, my features sharper. I began to see things during my rounds that couldn't be real. Shadows that moved against the light, reflections that didn't match their sources, and sometimes, in the security monitors, glimpses of the ballroom bleeding through into the real gallery. The third and fourth disappearances happened on the same night, a married couple who had argued loudly about the painting's meaning during their visit. The fifth was a security guard from the day shift who had covered for me once. The sixth and seventh were art students who had spent hours studying the painting's technique. Each time, New figures would appear in the painting, and each time, the dreams became more intense. Lilith and Asmodeus revealed more of their plans. Speaking of a grand design centuries in the making, they were preparing for something they called the Great Revelation, when the barriers between worlds would dissolve completely. I tried to quit, of course, multiple times, but Ms. Blackwood always convinced me to stay, offering raises, bonuses, and eventually threats so subtle they seemed to come from my own mind. I realized I couldn't leave, not just because of their influence, but because I might be the only one who could stop what was coming. Began researching obsessively during my off hours. The Blackwood family history led me down dark paths, revealing connections to ancient cults and occult practices. The mansion itself had been built on land considered sacred by Native American tribes, who warned settlers about entities they called the beautiful ones who devour. The more I discovered, the more I understood that the painting was just one of many such portals around the world. The Blackwoods had been collecting them for generations, creating a network of gateways for these beings to enter our world. Each disappearance strengthened their foothold in our reality. Last night, everything changed. During my rounds, I found Ms. Blackwood standing before the painting, but she wasn't alone. Lilith and Asmodeus were with her, no longer confined to the canvas or my dreams. They had somehow manifested in our world, their beauty even more terrible in reality than in my nightmares. They offered me a choice: join them as a collector, helping to lure others to the painting, or become part of their collection. Ms. Blackwood smiled that knowing smile again, and I realized she had faced the same choice years ago. The slight shimmer around her edges, the ageless quality of her features, she was no longer fully human. I'm writing this account now, with only hours left until I have to make my decision. The painting pulses with an inner light, and the music is no longer a whisper but a symphony I can feel in my bones. The dancers in the painting have all turned to face outward, their masked faces watching, waiting. I've hidden copies of this testimony throughout the city, scheduled emails to reporters and police departments, and left clues that I pray someone will follow. If you're reading this, stay away from the Blackwood Gallery. Don't look too long at any paintings that seem to move, and if you hear music that sounds too beautiful to be real, run. Tonight is the full moon, and I've made my choice. I won't become like Ms. Blackwood, won't help them lure innocent people to their doom, but I also won't become part of their collection. I've studied the painting's magic enough to understand its workings. At midnight, when the barrier is thinnest, I'm going to destroy it. The method is complex, requiring precise timing and materials, but if I succeed, the portal will collapse. The risk is that everyone trapped inside could be lost forever, including me if something goes wrong. But it's better than allowing Lilith and Asmodeus to complete their plans. I can hear them now, their footsteps echoing through the gallery as they approach my office. The painting thrums with power, and the music rises to a crescendo. If you're reading this and I've failed, watch for the signs. Look for galleries with 13 paintings. Listen for music that exists just beyond human hearing. And whatever you do, never accept an invitation to dance at midnight. The Blackwood Gallery burned to the ground on the night of October 31st, 2023. No bodies were recovered, though 12 paintings were found intact in the ruins. A 13th painting, mentioned in gallery records but never photographed, was never found. The cause of the fire remains undetermined. 7 missing persons cases connected to the gallery remain unsolved. Local legends say that on full moon nights, if you stand in the ruins of the Blackwood Gallery, you can hear distant music and see lights like those of a grand ball. Some claim to have seen beautiful figures dancing among the shadows, wearing masks that hide faces too perfect to be human. Others report being invited to join a dance that never ends. The property remains abandoned, though developers report strange difficulties with any attempts to rebuild. The last construction crew quit after claiming they heard music in the walls and saw impossible things in their mirrors. The land is now marked as historically significant and left untouched, though visitors are strictly prohibited after sunset. Daniel Mitchell's disappearance remains unsolved, and his warning unheeded. Yet sometimes, on quiet nights, new paintings appear in galleries around the world, always depicting masked figures at a midnight ball, always numbered 13 in their collections, and always watching, waiting for the next dancer to join their eternal revel. Thank you for tuning into my story. If you enjoyed it, please don't forget to like the video. It helps support my channel and allows me to keep creating more content for you. I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to comment below and share your favorite part of the story or any theories you might have. And if you haven't already, subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any future uploads. Your support means the world to me. And I'm excited to bring you even more thrilling stories.